handful of quarterbacks around the league playing chicken right now with new contracts going, hey, no, you first, no, you first, no, you first. Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence. And there are varying degrees of confidence that these deals are going to get done at the top of the market, and fan bases feel very differently in each case about these things. Tony Wiggins from Locked On Jaguars joins me now. And Tony, Trevor Lawrence is an interesting case because we're talking about the number one overall pick, someone who, when he was drafted, was talked about as a generational type player, and we just haven't seen that with any consistency. Where do you stand right now on Trevor Lawrence's trajectory before we get to the contract part?
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I understand people from both sides that feel how they feel about him. I do think most people are battling against the pre-draft perception or evaluation and all of the slogans and adjectives that were placed on Trevor Lawrence. It has not gone exactly the way that storybook would have you think it was going to go. But I mean, who did when they came into the league? Who came into the league and didn't struggle? It's like Brett Favre didn't get traded from Atlanta first, right? Or like Mark Brunell didn't get traded from Green Bay first.
Yeah.
So, guys have had struggles. So I think a lot of times what happens is that perception, and we are battling against that whole scenario of generational quarterback, going to be the next Patrick Mahomes. We're just battling against that instead of looking at it for what it is and watching the tape and seeing all those drops, the offensive line, the fact that he has to get rid of the ball really, really fast. There have been a lot of things that have led to Trevor Lawrence being underwhelming a little bit.
Yeah, structurally, we know what happened with Urban Meyer. Personnel-wise, we know some of the deficiencies that have been there. Like 10 touchdowns dropped last year. There were 3 in one. I've never seen more touchdowns where one foot gets down in the back of the end zone in one game than we saw last year for Trevor Lawrence. And the thing with quarterbacks is particularly interesting, Tony, because we always say pay for future performance, not past performance, right? Mm-hmm. But with quarterbacks, you kind of want both, don't you?
Yeah, and it's hard because these days what you're battling against, I think sometimes people believe that when it comes up, when the time to pay a person comes up, that you're going to have all your questions answered, especially if that person has been a day one starter. Well, in this situation, when you're dealing with a whole lot of money like this, you won't have all of those questions answered. There's not a perfect time to give Trevor Lawrence a contract extension. The bottom line is it's just his turn. And there have been other guys that you could point at, whether it be Kirk Cousins or Jalen Hurts, that have not had consistent at the time that they signed their deal, because Kirk Cousins is like really into it now, but they did not have the consistency that you need from a quarterback. We've seen it. Baker Mayfield hasn't had it. And granted, he didn't sign that huge deal. But the thing is, sometimes you have to make these decisions. Yeah, you gotta make these decisions before it becomes obvious, or if you want to play poker and you want to see another card, it might cost you a little bit more, because what if he does like Josh Allen? What if he gambles on himself and he actually shows you exactly what you thought? Now that extra look is going to cost you extra money.
Yeah, and this is also tricky because he is the one constant, right? So the last couple of years, all the upheaval that you've had, he's been the one guy who you can count on reliably. Him and Josh Allen, ironically, just the other Josh Allen, the defense Josh Allen, and he just got paid. There's also that part of it, Tony, that I feel like we can't ignore is when you have a leader, are you just going to throw away a year playing chicken with this guy that's saying, hey, no, like we think it's 45 million, not 50, where all of a sudden the team is looking around going, is this our quarterback for the future or is he not?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta use the bathroom and get off the pot. I forgot. I was going to say something else, but we can't do that on a family show.
We could have bleeped it.
Yeah, but man, really, dog, it's just that's the dilemma, and I think when you haven't had other things that you can point to as either the solution or as the problem that contributed to you having a whole bunch of trepidation about him.
Right.
When those things are too abundant, which they have been, and I think they're this way because the Jaguars basically just took last offseason off and said, we're good. We're just going to go with what we have. Well, when you do that now.
Well, that was because 2 off seasons ago, they were a teenager with a credit card.
Right. So now what you do, you look back in retrospect and it's like, well, we shouldn't have done this. We shouldn't have done that. The goal is to have less stuff that you can point to so you can fairly evaluate what is right in front of you. I don't think if you have to make a decision today about whether paying Trevor or not, I think they should pay him if you have to make that decision today. If you're willing to wait for that decision, though, you might have to make him the highest paid player in the league if you've done the things around him you were supposed to do this offseason.
And that would be a good problem to have if you're the Jaguars. Hey, he's the highest paid player in the league because he's playing like a top 5, top 8 kind of quarterback. Hey, those guys get paid. Tony, appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Stay up to date on the Jacksonville Jaguars all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Jaguars on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube.